The best example I can give is, I think, something that most people will understand, which is I had a patient come in and she was on, I think, over 140 milligrams of methadone a day. So to give you kind of a perspective, the standard, I mean, most people with cancer would take maybe 10 milligrams twice a day. So she was on massive doses of methadone, which is a very long acting opioid, which has some horrendous side effect issues because people take tons of it, they don't get very high, and then they get a little high and they take a little bit more to push the high like they would with a shorter acting opiate, and then they wake up dead. So I looked at her and I said, here's the deal. We'll get you off this because it's absolutely 100% destroying your life. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. It's going to be unbelievably brutal. Your chronic pain that you've had is going to come back way worse than it's ever been. And I'll see you every single week, and it might take a year. And when you're done, it'll be 100% worth it. And so I think going into it, you have to be really honest. Like our podcast is BS free MD. And I think I've been BS free, at least in medicine, my entire life. And you don't help people by telling them something that they want to hear or something that's not true. And this woman was great. It was like refreshing for her. She's like, okay, we'll just go with the program. And it took a super long time. And she had chronic pain for the rest of her life. But she was way more functional and felt way better. And so it's the same thing. It's like, you might go through a therapeutic relationship with somebody where it's trauma, which means the end of trauma and the end of you traumatizing yourself from that trauma from someone else is forgiveness. But there's no way in the world you're going to see somebody for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour and say, okay, well, here's your goal. Your goal is to forgive the person that raped you. That's not going to work. Now, you as the therapist or the physician might know that that's the goal, but you have to kind of slowly wean them off. Like it's like, it's like a drug.
Right.
And you're like, okay, what about this? What about the, and then and there's some people in the recovery world that really believe it's all trauma. I mean, I think it would be naive to say that all mental illness is trauma-based. I think that that's silly. I think probably way more of it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think a tremendous amount, and you could maybe make an argument that the vast majority of behavioral issues, that like substance stuff, starts initially with trauma, and the trauma may not be significant.
Right.
And the bigger traumas like what May went through and so forth. And there's a lot of people that believe, that are deep into recovery that think that they're 100% of it's trauma. And again, I don't believe that it's 100% of anything.
Just thinking of
I agree with that.
My family. I mean, I think that, and what we believed as doctors for a long time is the brain and mental health. And now, we know mental health is actually, there's so much more, there's so much hormones and neurochemicals in the gut that play a part in neurotransmitters and brain health, etc. But we used to say the brain is like another organ. Sometimes your pancreas doesn't make as much insulin, and sometimes your thyroid just doesn't make as much hormone anymore, and we have to adjunct that with supplements. And for some reason, people's brain neurotransmitters don't function as well as they should for somebody's sort of baseline. And maybe for a while you were fine, and then something happens and your brain decides it doesn't want to make the right amounts of serotonin or norepinephrine or whatever. And so therefore, let's give it some drugs to like replace that, right? That was the thing.
Yeah.
So I would say that I do believe, mental health issues can be, for sure, we all know it can be hereditary. I think a lot of cases, even in my family, there's bipolar disease, and how it unmasked. I would think with my sister, but I could be wrong. She would say that there was no real specific trauma that she could pinpoint. There might have been, but so if there's a, for a lot of people, it's like, no, I don't think there was one really dramatic thing that happened. I'm just having panic attacks. Things have been great in my life or whatever. I think it can be multiple little small insults that add up, nature and nurture and all that, just like anything else. So,
Right.
my point is that, yeah, sometimes you can definitely blame it on certain traumas or things that happen as you're developing as a kid and your brain's developing. I mean, we know your brain's developing until your mid-20s for sure, but
Right.
maybe it's a subconscious insult that you don't really notice, but maybe not.